And here we are for one more week of head-to-head. Alabama advancing to the national championship with a big win over Clemson. We're going to break it down. We're talking Alabama. We're talking Georgia in the national championship game. I'm Lauren Sisler.
And I'm Kevin Scarbinsky. It's Darth Vader versus Luke Skywalker. Whom will the Force be with?
Okay, Kevin, before we dig a little deeper into the storylines of this football game, first and foremost, you have two SEC teams playing for a national championship. The guys chanting SEC, SEC. So much for the dominance of the SEC, right? What happened to the SEC? Little shoulder shrug. This is only the second time in this national championship game that we've seen two teams play from the same conference. Alabama did it against LSU back in 2011. It's Alabama versus Georgia. Georgia going for their first national championship since 1980, and Alabama going for its fifth under head coach Nick Saban. So those are some of the outlying storylines as both of these teams go in here. But as you said before, it's Kirby Smart, it's Nick Saban. How does this thing unfold? I am expecting one of the best national championship games for some time.
The last time these teams met in a championship setting, not the 2015 takedown in the rain when Alabama destroyed Georgia and really set in motion the departure of Mark Richt and the elevation of Kirby Smart. So Alabama has only itself to blame that Georgia is in this position by taking down Georgia in that game. But the last time they played in a championship setting was the 2012 SEC championship game in the Georgia Dome. It was good to the last drop, literally. Went to the last play, Georgia came up 5 yards short, and of course Alabama went on and destroyed Notre Dame to win the national championship. Georgia would have done the same. So they came close then, but this is the best Georgia team we have seen in a long, long time. And you know, everyone this week is talking about that incredible stat that Nick Saban's 11-0 against his proteges. None of his proteges, none of them has had a team as good as the one Kirby Smart is going to walk into that Mercedes-Benz Stadium on Monday night. So this is the best chance for one of the pupils to take down the teacher.
And just to think, in just a year or two. Of course, we had great matchups, Alabama and Clemson the last 2 years, but certainly looking forward to this one. Some of the storylines I'm looking at, I think that what we saw from the Rose Bowl, this Georgia team, the dynamic duo, some of the yards that Nick Chubb and Sony Michel put up here, combined for 326 yards, 5 touchdowns. That's averaging 13 yards per carry. So that's going to be huge for this Alabama team to stop that dynamic duo. But one thing that was interesting to me in that Rose Bowl, as you can see by the indicator of going into double overtime, the score, was that defense of Georgia's got exposed. And that Georgia defense has been strong, lights out since week 1. So I think that will be another big storyline. On the flip side, you've got Alabama's defense, who obviously showed up to play in this football game against Clemson. Anthony Jennings will be out. He will miss this football game. He had surgery, as he reported this morning. But overall, I think that this Alabama defense showed us what they're capable of, but they are going to have their hands full when it comes to what Jake Fromm's able to do. Obviously a true freshman in this football game. Be interesting to see. He showed us that he could come to play in that Rose Bowl. He showed us what he could do under that type of pressure. Can he repeat that performance against Alabama on Monday?
Jake Fromm played the game of his life.
He did.
Against Oklahoma. Keywords there, against Oklahoma. You know what you can do with all those numbers that Georgia ran up in that defense? Open that window right there and throw them out there. Because that Oklahoma defense bears no resemblance to this Alabama defense. We saw the real Alabama defense, the healthy Alabama defense, the fresh and fast Alabama defense against Clemson. They will miss Anthony Jennings. He played the game of his life.
He did.
Against Clemson. He was in the backfield repeatedly making tackles for loss. That is a loss for Alabama to overcome, but they've been dealing with that kind of thing all year long. They're better equipped to deal with it now than they were earlier in the season. But Lauren, I brought a historic document here. This is the box score and the final book of stats from the Alabama-Clemson game. This was old school. This was Alabama the way Nick Saban built that program. 66 snaps in that game, not many in today's game. 42 of them were running plays.
I like how you said historic document there.
24 of them were pass plays. Damian Harris got 19 carries, by far his biggest workload of the season. And while he only had 77 yards, that was more than in Clemson's entire rushing total. Alabama kept the ball, They kept the ball away from Clemson. They had short yardage on third down for the most part. They weren't in third and long very often. They didn't have to be very good in the passing game, and they weren't. Jalen Hurts was named the offensive MVP, but really it could have been the offensive line. Opening up just
or Deron
enough
Payne,
holes.
because we saw him on offense.
That was a star performance by Deron Payne. I mean, how many 310-pound nose guards can, first of all, catch that interception, picking it off the turf practically, then making a cutback move on a would-be tackler, and then catching the touchdown pass with the toe tap. That's the kind of athletes that Alabama has. But guess what? Georgia has similar athletes. This is going to be, I think, a classic football game. If this one doesn't go 4 quarters, I will be very surprised.
All right, it is prediction time. Who we going with in this one? Kevin, I know you picked against Alabama before.
You have to remind everyone of that.
But you said to me after they beat Clemson, you said, I'm not picking against them again.
Ever again for the rest of my life. That was an exaggeration, but we'll see what I'll come up with here.
All right, so I think in this matchup, I think Brian Dable and company need to dial up some good offensive schemes here. I think that they're really going to have their hands full with this Georgia defense. It's not going to be anything like we saw with Clemson. And what was crazy going to that football game, I thought that Clemson defense was going to step up and really, be able to stop that Alabama football team. They weren't able to do so. I don't think this game, though, will be a high-scoring affair. I think we're going to go back to kind of more of a defensive matchup between the two teams. My prediction is Alabama, though, winning it 24-17.
Look, again, we saw the old school Alabama in that semifinal against Clemson. I think you're going to see more of the same. That said, Jalen Hurts is going to have to make some plays, maybe more so with his feet than with his arm, because I think Georgia can be vulnerable. As good as that defense is, as good as Roquan Smith is, he has been as good a defensive player as there is in America, along with Minkah Fitzpatrick from Alabama all season long. But that Georgia defense is vulnerable to the run. Go back to the Auburn game. Now, obviously, Auburn beat both of these teams in the regular season in Jordan-Hare Stadium when Auburn was at full strength. Kerryon Johnson against Georgia, 32 carries, 167 yards. Very, very impressive. Now, he had a good game against Alabama. He had 30 carries there, but only 104 yards. The Georgia defense gave up 40 to Auburn. The Alabama defense gave up 26 to Auburn. Big difference. Head-to-head, strength on strength, power on power. That's what this game is going to be. Alabama's a little bit better on defense than Georgia when it's healthy. It's a little bit better in the running game. And I know Sony Michel and Nick Chubb are outstanding, but so are Damian Harris and Bo Scarborough and the rest of that cast. I think you're going to see Alabama go back to that game plan, pound the ball, pound the ball, pound the ball, keep the ball. This is going to come down to the last play. It may take a field goal. It may take blocking a field goal. But you don't pick against Nick Saban in championship games, and you don't pick against him against former assistants. So Alabama finds a way, 24-23.
Ooh, it's going to be a good one.